who is very proud to be the co-chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Preventative and Public Health. He's devoted his entire life to improving the health quality of the community. We then heard from the Honourable Jed Carney, the Assistant Health Minister. She talked about her nursing background. In her DNA, she cares for people, she's compassionate, and she wants best for the community. She translated that into her amazing work in the nursing union and with the ACTU, and really is approaching this from both the perspective of a nurse, a carer, but also someone who has to look after all of the employees of a business. We then were very pleased to welcome Professor Paul Kelly, the Chief Medical Officer, to the forum. He started off by saying that to solve a wicked problem, you cannot do it alone. He then said, we know that respiratory infection is spread through the air, and in the Omicron era, that has been put beyond doubt. We were very pleased to hear his commitment to putting indoor air quality on the agenda and really focusing on it over the next 12 months in various fora where he is a leader. And he put a challenge to us. He said, let's ask some new questions. How clean is good enough when we're talking about clean air? What costs are reasonable? And he was very open to the idea of creative solutions. We then heard from Professor Nick Talley. He said to us, look, is air quality important to health? The answer is an overwhelming yes. Clean air is fundamental to good health and well-being. We were delighted to be joined by Professor Brett Sutton, the Chief Health Officer of Victoria. #COVID is airborne. He said we need to move away from having to make individual mindful decisions, from having them being required every single moment of the day. He said, if we get this right, the benefits over generations will be felt. He urged us to play the long game, and he said, right now Australia has the opportunity to be a world leader in this space. We then moved to panel one. We had Professor Brendan Crabb mention that we've reached the Earth moves around the sun moment when it comes to COVID and other respiratory diseases being airborne. The challenge is that nobody knows that. We need to take action on clean air, even if there was no pandemic. And he reminded us of the 2019 bushfires and how there was a run on N95 masks back then. He urged us to remember that there are three things to do: to get vaccinated, to test when it comes to COVID, and to clean the air. And this is the one where we really need to turn our attention right now. Professor Guy Marks shared some learnings that we have all benefited from history, from TB and from cholera. He showed us the ridiculous picture of the pump with the handle, which was the best solution the doctors could come up with regarding cholera, and urged us to reach out to our multidisciplinary colleagues, stating that engineers are really required to influence solutions. Professor Nancy Baxter stated, we cannot not breathe. We cannot not share air. Clean air is a public good. And she stated that the pandemic has created a burning platform. Clean air is a right, and she quoted that $12 billion per year is in fact the cost of doing nothing, the cost of unsafe indoor air, and that was a pre-pandemic cost, so the cost would be markedly higher now. Robin Scott stated that once risk is established and mitigations are reasonable, employers must act. He encouraged us to focus on all the other non-health related benefits of clean air, like productivity for business, academic performance for students, and increased focus on cognitive function for everyone. He quoted that an increase of productivity of 1% translates into $20 billion uplift economically in perpetuity annually. We then moved to panel two, and Andrew Miller decided that today was a Woodstock day in public health. We all got like that, and I certainly hope he is right. He said he feels an impatience on behalf of people for whom the time is already too late. He states that we need to rethink this idea that there is a group of healthy people over here and other vulnerable people over there. And he reminded everybody there is only us as a whole. Louise Houlihan stated that current occupational health and safety frameworks around the country place positive obligations on employers today, but the missing link is compliance codes, and that could be a really quick win for all of us. Kate Cole said that clean air is a fundamental occupational health and safety issue. She said many employers want to do the right thing, but they don't know what to do, and we need to uplift that guidance. Louise Houlihan said, look, we need a world where we don't need a cage in all schools, but I'd just like to say, I think while we're fixing all this, if we can work out how to blame Kate Cole, we should indeed have a crack at that as well. Robin Schofield, Associate Professor Robin Schofield reminded us that the UN General Assembly, in fact last year, declared that all people on Earth have a human right to a clean environment, and that includes clean air. 90% of the world's population are currently breathing unsafe air, and indoor air quality is worse than outdoor air quality. She reminded us to be aware of the unintended consequences of our journey forwards, urged us to take a breath and really think strategically and collectively before moving forwards. Our next panel, expertly moderated by Associate Professor Nada Ahmad as well. She stated the reason you don't stub your toe at a building is because it was explicitly designed like that to prevent it. Nick Lane stated that we should make clean air an aspirational objective, and he urged us to embrace this challenge. A little bit like, in fact, in the US, the White House launched a clean air in buildings challenge. They did exactly that to inspire great solutions. Nick also gave us some examples of energy efficiency gains over standard housing regarding passive house standards that include an uplift in air quality. Dominic Hess said, I want both increased ventilation and reduced energy for a building, and she demonstrated that it is indeed achievable in a neat pilot study where she was playing with smoke and lasers. And she has a big task ahead of her in terms of needing to retrofit 80 buildings per year, but she then mentioned that's going to create 12,000 jobs and add $2.7 billion to the economy. Gary Brake said that we need to be aware that we should really try, as we move forwards, to match the benefits to the person or organisation who is going to incur the costs. So a great piece of advice there. We're also very pleased to hear that he said he's ready to be the critical friend to help negotiate the path ahead. And Nicholas Burt talked about mandatory disclosure, just like we would have for energy ratings. Energy ratings cover 90% of the commercial office space at the moment. He was really calling for an uplift in transparency and talking about what an incredible competitive advantage this could provide. For panel 4, we were thrilled to hear from Professor Lydia Borowska, our Time magazine superstar. She was included in the Innovators section in 2021, alongside Elon Musk, I might add. She urged us to measure indoor air quality in all public spaces. When we look at what selection of pollutants, she suggested PM2.5, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and ventilation. She suggested we need to gather evidence regarding what we need to do and put it into action. Peter Peach said there's no excuse anymore for poor ventilation in public spaces. He talked about carbon dioxide monitors, these little things, and how brilliant they are in making the invisible visible. And he also mentioned the great case study from Belgium, where from July 1 this year, in fact, it is mandatory for all public spaces to display air quality in real time. Professor Jeff Henmar gave us this great quote, it's really a pandemic of buildings. I've never thought about it like that, Jeff. I think that's a brilliant way to think about it. He urged us to remember that thermal comfort always wins, so we must prioritise temperature control when we're talking about an uplift in ventilation. And he urged us to consider that systems that rely on human behaviours do not work. This has to just all happen in the background automatically. Professor Deborah Lupton on panel 5 urged us to think about understanding social behaviours. How do people make sense of risk? And she said we must be mindful of misinformation, but let's use social media to really uplift communications, especially around risk and risk understanding. Associate Professor Suman Majumdar, I've written here, he said many great things. There's a whole lot of great things here, but he said the lessons from the Victorian experience were, some of them were bring people together, communication is key and you must amplify your message on and on and on. And when it comes to this implementation and guidance gap, we're all going to find ourselves asking, who are you going to call? And I think that that's a really good point. Who are we going to call and how is the community going to access this information? Associate Professor Donna Green illustrated that in just 9 minutes, classrooms with no windows are unsafe. And then she showed us this brilliant thing. Go and Google this, everybody. And she dreams of turning this little canary into a kookaburra and sticking it into Australian schools. And it's simple, it's fun, it will engage children and teachers in the solution. Dr. Ian Longley joined us, zoomed over from New Zealand. He said, if you ask kids what to do when someone does a fart, they know. They say, open the windows, open the doors, and get out. I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I don't like talking about farts, but my goodness, they do. So he's spot on there. What a brilliant, innovative way to engage children. He also mentioned the Nano Girl videos. I will send everybody who's attended today a link to the brilliant Nano Girl videos. And he urged us to also think about, let's make air cleaners a bit more engaging. Let's make them fun so you get the community involved. And finally, we had panel 6, again, Associate Professor Nada Hamad, we cannot let a crisis go to waste, urging us to think, what is our legacy here as a nation? Australia has an innovation culture, we can rise to this incredible challenge. Plumstone alerted us to the fact that there is a 10% death rate for people who acquire COVID in hospitals, and that should not be acceptable in any Australian healthcare setting. She urged us to rethink the idea of exclusively protecting the vulnerable, because the vulnerable are in fact everywhere. We're all connected. She stated that long COVID was the elephant in the room, and she very beautifully explained that we should be protecting our children first and foremost, and clean air really does offer this opportunity of a much more inclusive society for children, for the elderly, for immunocompromised, for absolutely everyone. Dominic Marr stated again that protecting children should be a fundamental priority. He talked about the women's workforce participation suffering and how sick and fewer workers are terribly bad for the economy. He talked about bringing business into the conversation and building a bigger group of people into the room. Jason Monti asked the question, do we have the tech? Yes. Do we have the tech the market wants? Not yet. But that's a yet. There's definitely a yet there, it is coming. He stated that better indoor air quality can reduce energy use, and a great strategic idea for us is to leverage sustainability policies that are going to be required of businesses as we move forward. So businesses are going to be forced to reduce their energy footprint, so let's uplift ventilation at the same time. He urges to show people visually what is happening here, because the visual message is so impactful. And finally then, Colin Kinner stated that clean air is a massive opportunity for business, for the economy and for innovators. It's a good news story. We should be doing it to reduce risk to an entire generation of children, and he stated that now is a little bit like the beginning of the internet, which it certainly does put a lot of energy and excitement into the discussions. So we certainly, in summary, have a general consensus that there is a problem that is important to fix. It has been a blind spot up until now, but now's the end of that. We do need to come together as a multidisciplinary team, and the great news is a lot of key people in that team and a lot of representatives of important people on that team are right here in the room today.